Hey folks, this week we are getting into slave rebellions, slave insurrections, and things like that. And there are a multitude of these spread out through American history. During the colonial period, the largest slave revolt is the Stono Rebellion. Following that, we have Denmark Vesey's rebellion. After that, in the early 1800s, we have Nat Turner's revolt. Um, and all of these uh, very much frighten to the core the white slave owning community. You've got this population of enslaved people that the white community, the white slave owning community, has really told themselves and misled themselves into incorrectly believing that this enslaved community was somewhat content in their lot. And that's not the case at all. No one would be content with being a slave just because, these people aren't continually revolting doesn't mean that they're content in this situation. And so we have large scale revolts like Stono, Denmark Vesey, Nat Turner. And we also have a tremendous amount of smaller revolts, smaller efforts at resistance by enslaved communities, enslaved individuals. Um, sorry. And every time this happens, the white slave owning community very much acts completely shocked that something like this would happen. And it does, turn the light on for them for a period of time. Unfortunately, it doesn't last, but it does kind of get their attention. And when these happen, when this does get their attention, they're reminded of the circumstances. And it's not like it helps or makes them realize, what's going on morality wise or anything like that. But they do realize that, there's this population of enslaved people that are, forced into labor. They're beaten, they're raped, sometimes they're murdered. And, naturally, you're going to have, some resistance and some, violence erupting out of that as resistance. Um, and that's what we're looking at this week in the discussion board with white community reactions to all of these slave rebellions. One of my uh, personal sort of favorite examples of sort of a white reaction to these events uh, occurs in 1859, and it's much later than what we are talking about. Sorry, I'm working on a cough. I got pneumonia uh, earlier. I'm over it now. But this is a fantastic example because it really gets at the fear that the white slave owning community is constantly dealing with because of the situation they're created. Don't get me wrong, that they're absolutely creating the situation, but they are dealing with this fear on a continual basis. And like I said, this occurs in 1859 out in Texas, and it's known to a lot of Texan historians and 19th century historians as this event called the Texas Troubles. Uh, and what happens is in 1859, it's a particularly hot summer, very hot, dry summer out in Texas, and seemingly random, a lot of fires start during the summer. Barns are catching on fire. Some shops in town are catching on fire. Some homes are catching on fire. And immediately, the first thing that the white slave-owning communities there in Texas, the people jumped to the conclusion is that this absolutely, without question, has to be a slave insurrection. This has to be some sort of plot by slaves that they are going to rise up and they are going to, either fight for their freedom or at the very least go on a murderous rampage against their white owners. Uh, and this is also suspect are any white people in the community that are foreign, not foreign from outside of the United States, but foreign to the community. So traveling salesmen, pretty much them, traveling salesmen, anybody traveling through the community, these people are very, very much going to be suspect. A lot of these folks are captured, and it's argued that they are abolitionists. And these abolitionists, even we don't have any evidence that they are, but they're going to argue that these abolitionists are sowing discontent among the slaves, and they're trying to get the slaves to rise up and go on, some sort of rebellion. And so the white slave-owning community members are going to capture some of these people that are strangers to the area. They're also going to arrest some of the slaves that possibly have a reputation for non-compliance or maybe kind of, not being difficult, not doing what they're told, to a large extent. And so these people are going to be tortured. They're going to use various methods to extract information from these suspects. And some of these people are going to confess. And honestly, if you torture a person, most people will tell you what you want to know. And I'm one of those people. If you start working on me doing some really messed up stuff, I'll tell you from Mars. I am absolutely from Mars. We are planning an invasion of Earth. We have the lizard people. They're going to help. I'll tell you whatever. I am not a pain person. And most people are probably like that. I'm fine with saying, I'm one of the people that will just tell you whatever. But most people are probably like that. So if you start working on somebody, they'll tell you what you want to know. And we want, in this situation, in the Texas Troubles, we want to know that there is a slave insurrection afoot. We want to know that there are abolitionists running around. And we start working on people, and they start telling us exactly what we want to know. And so more people are captured. The conspirators, the people that are involved in this plot, are captured. And they're questioned, and some of these people are going to be executed. I can't remember offhand, but I think at least a dozen people are executed. A number of other people are tortured and beaten and stuff like that. And then the communities that are involved all celebrate. Hey, we put down this slave insurrection, and they feel like that moment of panic has passed. And they're going to pat themselves on the back and congratulate themselves. And so that's what they've done, though. Think about that. Their first reaction to these fires that are occurring is that this is a slave insurrection. And so they're going to start capturing people and torturing people and executing people with that in mind. That's the first thing that we're going to jump to. That's the conclusion. It turns out that there was never any kind of slave insurrection at all. At the time in 1859, I'm sure there's a possibility that there were a couple of people thinking about this in such a large state as Texas, but this one wasn't involved at all. What was involved, like I said at the beginning of the video, this is a particularly hot and dry summer out in Texas. And a new brand of matches had hit the market in the summer of 1859. These are fittingly named Lucifer matches. And Lucifer matches are strike anywhere matches. And in a lot of strike anywhere matches, they probably have very much toned down the amount of phosphorus, but a high degree of phosphorus is what makes those matches strike anywhere. You can run them across any rough surface, the phosphorus gets going, and that's what strikes that match. You can buy, no, it's not phosphorus, it's magnesium in these other things, but phosphorus was the cause in those Lucifer matches, sorry. But that's what it was. These matches had a high concentration of phosphorus so that they would strike easily, and you get that coupled with a very, very hot and dry Texas summer, and these matches were just spontaneously combusting. You know, put a book of matches up on the counter in the barn, you stick some on the table in the house or in a store or something like that, and they were igniting by themselves. And so this was absolutely not a slave insurrection or an abolitionist plot. This was an accident with a bunch of matches that, you know, upwards of a dozen people got killed for. But it's an absolute tragedy that, you know, that this was an accident and people got killed for it. But the point that I'm trying to make, though, is that, you know, they're fires, random fires, and the immediate conclusion is that this is a slave rebellion. And that's the level of anxiety and fear and paranoia that white slave-owning communities found themselves at constantly. Anything that happens, that's the cause, and that's what they're going to jump to. And so this week in the discussion, kind of explore that thing. Look into some of these slave rebellions, and look especially what the white community reacts, what kinds of things that they do in response to these. So that's all for this one. Thanks.